Powerhouse Hobbs, he's looking for redemption against Miro in London at All In. We're going to talk about him and the rest of our Black Stars heading to London at All In just a second. So stay tuned. This is WrstlXtra.
Yo, this is WrstlXtra. I'm your boy, A Dazzle, the Black Wrestling Advocate, always joined by my trios team, Mix, the WrestleManiac, if you will. Yeah. And of course, the man that is the Professor Gerard Bonner. The Book of Hobbs, chapter 2, verse 1 says, in order for me to find redemption, I need to call the Redeemer. And calls out the Redeemer. That is Miro on the last episode of Collision this past Saturday. So Powerhouse Hobbs is calling out the Redeemer Miro. Actually for all in, all out. I'm all confused. I can never get which one it is. But it is the Chicago, I believe it's in Chicago, the United Center in Chicago, where Collision, the first episode of Collision, kicked off. And here's the conundrum that we have with this whole thing now. So obviously, before Powerhouse Hobbs actually called out Miro, he said he doesn't need anyone, doesn't need no help. He's on his own. He's doing his own thing. But as Miro came walking to the ring, he was attacked by Aaron Solo and I can never get his surname correct. Whatever it is.
Oh, Nick Camarado.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Came out and attacked Miro, leading the commentators to believe or work out whether he actually is still in cahoots with QT Marshall and the rest of those boys. Mix. What is going on? Does Powerhouse Hobbs need anyone? I was glad when I heard him say those words, but then those two men came out, and now I'm like, what is going on? Mix, please shed some light on this for me, if you can.
I think we never really know if he is in cahoots with these guys still, or they're just trying to prove themselves to him to get him back on side. I guess it's still very foggy, and we're not very clear on that. I think the good thing about that segment is you saw him come out alone, and he was kind of reverting back to the Book of Hobbs. Obviously, he lost his way without the Book of Hobbs. He lost his way after winning the TNT Championship and going to this QTV stuff. So he's kind of reverted back to, I guess, what got him to some type of level, which is good. And he's calling out Miro, which is great. And then obviously you saw these two knuckleheads come out and jump attack Miro, and you're like, is this still QTV stuff? But it should be a very good program. It should be a very good program. My curiosity is like, where are we going with it? Like, it can just be good for both guys, but Powerhouse Hobbs almost looks like this is, like I say, like a reboot of that chapter, the Book of Hobbs character. Miro is basically brand new again ever since Collision started. So it's like, when it's all said and done within this feud, who is coming out on top? And it just scares me a bit because it could be detrimental for either man. And if we're honest with ourselves, we kind of think they've got more stock in Miro. So I don't want to see Hobbs take another kind of high profile loss. But as far as we know right now, I think the two men have got a match on pay-per-view out of pretty much nothing. But sometimes the best stuff just comes out of one guy just saying, I'm calling out this guy, like, let me stake my claim from here, sort of thing. So I'm looking forward to where it goes.
A phenomenal promo by Hobbs, I must say. Probably one of his best, probably the best he's ever done. He's not necessarily known too well for his promo, but that one definitely put our eyes on him with that. And as you said, Mix, I think that alone was enough to start this whole thing. It made sense. He was talking about redemption. Obviously, he calls that the Redeemer. It just made complete sense. The other conundrum, of course, as we've said, is this whole thing with QT Marshall and where it goes from here. As part of this whole promo, of course, Hobbs mentioned that he lost his TNT Championship. He said he lost, in the Owen Hart tournament to Ricky Starks as well. Gerard, where do you see this going? Will this be another high-profile loss for Hobbs, or will it be a big win for Hobbs and it carries on and goes somewhere else?
It's really tough because both of them need the win. And both of them need it in this high-profile space of a pay-per-view. So it's hard to predict right now where it's going to go, since really it just started on Saturday, which actually could be a good thing. I've been sitting here thinking, what ways are there for both of them to win? And I think long-term, it means a long-term program, something that's running 3 or 4 months, where they're trading matches and they're trading wins, and they finally have, kind of this one end-all be-all kind of match with a stipulation or something. And hopefully through the series of matches that have happened, both have proven that they've elevated their game such that whoever wins, both ultimately ends up winning. So I think they're going to need for this match at All Out to not be a one-off, but rather be the start of something that maybe goes all the way to, their October pay-per-view Full Gear, November pay-per-view Full Gear, or even as far as December with Winter is Coming. But they definitely need something that's going to run for a while.
So we have this whole thing with QT still kind of in the background. Is that a bad move? We saw Hobbs talking about reverting back to the Book of Hobbs. He lost his way. He's reverted back to the Book of Hobbs. Then, of course, QT's goons come out and do what they do. Is this whole thing? Should this whole thing be gone altogether, or can it add to this whole feud now with Miro and Hobbs? Who wants to go on that one?
Next, you want to Well, so I say this carefully. I feel like for Hobbs to be viewed in the main event picture these days, if he's going to have somebody by his side, they're going to have to be people who are deemed in that main event or next level tier. I don't believe that the entire QTV movement right now are at the level that PowerHouse Hobbs wants to go. In fact, if we're completely honest, he was always the star of that QTV movement. They were always supporting him, but they never really served at the level of support for the level of star that he is. So for him, one of two things needs to happen. Either he has to get rid of them completely, or he needs, if he's going to have somebody, he's got to figure out who those next people will be. And maybe those people come and get rid of, the QTV folks and move it that way. So his two choices are either walk solo, or if he's going to have somebody with him, it can't be the QTV folks. Sorry, QTV.
You say that, and my head was going as you were saying what you were saying, and I'm like, maybe. And especially with what you said about, with both Miro and PowerHouse kind of almost coming out both winners. How can that work? Maybe that we see some kind of soft alliance with Hobbs and Miro, because obviously there are 3 guys in this whole thing: QT, Camarado, Solo. Yes, PowerHouse has enough to get rid of both of them, but of course, Camarado's a big guy. He's as big as as Miro and Hobbs. So maybe he needs another person with him. And when I say a soft alliance, I don't want it to end up being a tag team and all that kind of stuff, or they're best friends and they come out together and all that. I don't need all of that. But even within this feud, they have to, maybe have some kind of tag team match, or the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and that kind of thing. I think that would be a nice way to end the whole thing with Hobbs and QT. But then we still have the feud that carries on between Miro and Hobbs. I think that might be a nice way to do it.
There's another somebody. I wonder if Mex is going to say the somebody I'm thinking about.
Go for it.
No. I was just going to say, is that too close to what they're doing on TV with MJF and Adam Cole right now?
I don't think it would be, because when I say a soft thing, that whole thing with MJF and Adam Cole, they're like best friends.
I mean, yeah.
They're
just in
promos together and blah blah blah. But it's
just in terms of two guys that aren't a tag team coming together, that kind of narrative.
Yes and no. I would only expect it to carry on for like maybe one match, maybe 2 weeks at the most, or something like that. But at the same time, they will still probably face off after they win or something like that. You know what I mean? Like something like that would make sense to me.
Yeah, if it goes too long, we're going to end up with War Joe, or their new name. Their new name would be Marabs. That's who they'd be. You know, they'd be Marabs. There'd be T-shirts. There'd be a whole merch movement. We are Marabs. So yeah, let's not have the tag team.
The book of Miro. No, we don't want all of that. None of that. There was a name you was going to mention, Gerard.
There is a name, and to me, if there's going to be potentially an alliance that allows these people to still individually do their thing, but really jump up, it's Ricky Starks. It's bringing those two back together. Starks is clearly at the main event picture right now. He and Hobbs have already battled, you know, and they can have this moment where they say we're better together. We don't have to be part of Team Taz, and we are really trying to ensure that we both end up at the top of the card, and we'll do what we got to do to get rid of everybody in our way. That potentially, because I do think if we're looking at Starks in this battle right now with all things Punks, which will probably include FTR, he's going to need somebody to roll with him. And and you know, Christian and the Dinosaur aren't going to work. So I think, you know, Hobbs is a strong contender who would be very intimidating against an FTR, against a Punk. It would certainly be the Muscle. And then, you know, you could also have kind of the savvy trickery kind of nature of Ricky Starks helping out Hobbs. I think it could work if they brought them back together.
What if? That's a good suggestion. Because I think right now Ricky Starks, obviously the Punk stuff is done. So before he spirals off into obscurity, this could be something good to save him. Hobbs with Swerve and AR Fox.
That would be something that we could talk about muscle. Because remember, he had that muscle before that didn't make any sense. And they were these two rookies, and we all went, huh? Yeah. And then they disappeared. Hobbs with
like if maybe even the Muscle, like you said, or you know, they can spiral off, and Fox and Hobbs could be like the tag team within there. Like I'm really not for the embassy with these lot at all. Never happened. So the more we can get this group to look more uniform and just get the embassy to go do whatever they were doing before, I'm all for.
But I must admit, Prince Nana's dancing is pretty entertaining these days.
Nana's good with Swerve. It's the other three that kind of just don't really make sense and and it's just not working. But here's the other thing, going back to the whole Ricky Starks thing, of course. Let's talk about it. So Ricky Starks came out, and you know, Tony Schiavone informed us all that Ricky Starks has been suspended for 30 days because of the attack that he gave on Ricky the Dragon Steamboat with his own belt, which he was holding in his hand, which was phenomenal. It's just Ricky Starks with belts. There's something going on here. There's something going on here. They need to use that in some way. But the interesting thing is he's been suspended from wrestling, but then he said he went and got a manager's license. We're talking about
Hobbs.
Ricky Starks, Hobbs. Ricky Starks as Hobbs' manager. Yeah, I'm thinking, I'm hoping that's where we're going. As Gerard already said, I mean that's going to be that would be a great thing. Ricky Starks won't be chasing any titles, won't be wrestling as I've said already. So for him to be standing next to Hobbs while Hobbs then tries to elevate himself on the card and stuff like that, I think that would be absolutely perfect. And it'd be very interesting to see how they are together now, following the past that they have, even the recent one with them, you know, both facing off against each other at the Owen Hart tournament as well. So that should be very interesting. Max, what do you think, apart from this suggestion, what do you think then happens when this 30 days is over? What does Ricky Starks then do? Because this man is, he's on a trailblazing run at the minute, and he's set himself still on CM Punk. Does he go straight back for CM Punk? Does he go for CM Punk during his 30 days? What's going to happen with Starks?
So ultimately, that 30 days rules him out of All In and All Out, which is a bit perplexing as to why they'll do that. But I think maybe the play is, like we say, the manager. The minute he said that on Collision, I couldn't see anyone past Hobbs anyway. And then obviously Hobbs had the segment. And I think maybe it's a thing where he's basically off TV, and at All Out during Hobbs and Miro is when he makes his first appearance. Ringside maybe costs Miro, and maybe Hobbs gets the win. And then that program following the ban, the suspension, will be Miro versus Starks. I mean, title-wise, it's kind of got to be the international title right now. I think that could be very good. Cassidy's had it for ages. I think he's defending it once again tomorrow night. But you know, that's what's left. The TNT title right now is doing some good stuff with Christian and Luchasaurus, and Darby is, you know, next in line there. So I couldn't imagine it being the TNT. And to be honest, where Starks is right now, he's above the TNT, although they are working on repairing that belt's image. So it's got to be the international title. But the 30 days suspension, unless the caveat is because pay-per-view is not TV, then otherwise I was perplexed when they said that, and I'm here counting on my fingers like, that means he got how many days? I was like,
right.
Yeah, it was a very confusing one. So maybe that's the caveat, but yeah, I think for now he's just maybe he's got an injury and he just needs some time. Who knows?
Collision was the night of promos because Hobbs, Starks, even Samoa Joe, promos were absolutely on fire. When Starks was talking, everything he was saying as a hero and all the rest of it was met with cheers from the crowd. And of course, Ricky Starks is claiming himself as the face of Collision, and this is his damn show. Is it then an absolute mistake that he won't be at All Out or All In? Or is it the case where he will still be at either one, possibly both, but just in some, obviously just not wrestling in the ring? Jared, what are you thinking is the best way for Starks to be used during this 30 days, and especially with these pay-per-views coming up?
He said something very interesting in that promo, and one of the things he said was really a bit of it took me back to 96, you know, with the whole it was literally a quote from Scott Hall where he says, "You want a war? I'm going to bring you a war." And so I don't remember the moment where AEW seemingly declared war on Starks, unless it was this suspension was their, you know, declaration of war. With that said, I think he completely shows up at All In. He completely shows up at All Out and looks to be as disruptive as he possibly can. Because for him, it's now, think about it. What better stages than the biggest event in the history of this company, as in All In, to make a scene? You know, going to Wembley for AEW is going to be the equivalent of, you know, when you dress your children up and you take them to that really swanky Easter service or that really cool event, and you tell them, be on your best behavior. Do not embarrass me. And they do that one thing that's going to embarrass you, and you are ready to go ham. This is Ricky Starks. Starks, they are trying to keep him away so that he doesn't misbehave at the swanky ballet. And I'm telling you, he's going to come and raise pure hell. And it's going to be great. So the question will be, in which ways can he do that? Which is the most impactful? Is it costing CM Punk his potential match against Samoa Joe? Is it interfering in MJF and Adam Cole? Like, what's the move? And then to come back in Chicago the next week and do it all over again, I really believe he's going to raise all kinds of havoc. Matter of fact, this might have been the best thing for Ricky Starks, because now we're not worried about wins and losses. We're worried about when he shows up, because you guys are going to go crazy in the UK. Y'all are going to go nuts when Starks shows up, and he's going to show up. If it's I bought a ticket, right? You can't keep him out if he bought a ticket, right? He's going to jump the guardrail. He's going to do something. And to me, that's going to make all of this fun. A lot of fun. That's what I think he does.
Interesting. I believe it's going to be something like that. It's just trying to work out or predict where and what, because as you said, there are a few different places. We know he's got this whole thing with Punk. That's probably the easy suggestion. But then if they wanted to really go for it, for him to interrupt the whole Adam Cole MJF, I don't think those two, that needs a Ricky Starks necessarily. But at the same time, the possibility is there. We've still got the whole thing with the TNT stuff. We've got the international stuff with Orange Cassidy as well. He could show up and do anything, anywhere. Sure. And as you said, I think this is a brilliant place for Ricky Starks to be, and especially with the backing that he has from the crowd at the moment as well. Anything he does will get a massive cheer, and everybody will be talking about Ricky Starks if they're not already. Still with everything all out, all in, all confused. We have we mentioned them too a little bit earlier. Swerve and AR Fox in this whole thing with Darby Allin. We saw, I believe it was on Dynamite or Rampage. I can't remember which one, but Sting is now involved. Mex, what are you expecting from this whole thing? Where are we going with this?
Can I just say, God bless AR Fox.
Yes.
What a remarkable turnaround. From jobbing and doing whatever stuff they were doing with him since he's come to AEW TV, to now having a casket match at All In alongside Swerve against Sting and Darby Allin. What a turnaround. Like, for sure, he's probably the person that ends up in the casket and loses, but it's just remarkable turnaround from where he was. And, he might have been just happy being used on TV and doing those jobs, but yeah, this is just a great spot. This story is really fun. It's good for Darby, which is kind of going concurrently with his chase for the TNT title as well. And yeah, like, these guys are gonna face a legend against Sting, in England, in London, where people are gonna be, probably holding dear onto this match because it might be the last time they see Sting live. Like, so
true.
Yeah, it's just a big occasion for everyone involved here, and I love the story of where they've got to with this, and obviously now Sting has come in as his vigilante self to come in help the situation. Like I say, I don't think Swerve and AR Fox are gonna have much joy on the day, but I do see maybe some progress with Swerve and Darby after this. I think Swerve may get a win with Darby, or maybe if Darby does become TNT champion, then Swerve eventually beats him for the title. Because I'm still trying to remember a time where Swerve has got a win in this long-lasting feud with Darby. It doesn't feel like it's happened this century, unless I'm forgetting an occasion. But yeah, it's looking good for these guys and this story going into All In.
As Mike said, it's a brilliant place for both Swerve and AR Fox to be in. It gives us some promise of something for the future. Now, Swerve has had, his dealings with Orange Cassidy with the International Championship, came very, very close to winning it. At one point, I felt he should have won it, to be honest. I thought he was going to be the guy to dethrone Cassidy finally, but obviously that hasn't happened. Does that now mean that the inevitable of Swerve beating Darby Allin for the TNT Championship, because I'm feeling it's going to be Darby Allin who wins, and then Swerve is going to be breathing down his neck. Gerard, do you believe that has to be something that has to happen for Swerve? And if it doesn't, could it cause a problem in terms of the way, the fans in general view Swerve's position in the company?
I think it's interesting. I think Swerve is definitely on a bit of a rebuild. When he first came in, I thought he came in strong. He had a really good tag team run with Keith Lee, obviously them winning the tag titles. And I still think that their run was underrated and was under-recognized given all that they accomplished. I think he kind of fell off after that in terms of trying to find his way. It feels like, even though we don't necessarily believe in the Mogul Embassy, we do believe in him and Fox. And so because of that, I think there are multiple ways they could go with it. It could result in Swerve being the TNT champion. It could result in Swerve becoming a tag champion. It could result in them going to win the Ring of Honor tag titles. I think there are options such that if he doesn't win the TNT championship, I think Swerve is still going to be very much okay. The proof is in the pudding. Swerve is in a match in front of the largest audience that he has ever wrestled in front of, with Sting and Darby Allin on the other side. So that in itself is a massive win, I think, for Swerve. And again, AEW is bringing their Sunday best over. Everybody's going to be dressed to the nines. Who are you putting on display? Swerve and AR Fox. That speaks against the legend of Sting and Darby Allin. And I've actually got a very interesting theory. While it does seem improbable that Sting would lose, because I don't think Sting has been on the losing end at all in AEW, if there was a way for him to lose, it would be Darby Allin getting stuffed in the coffin. True. Think about how that alters his momentum going into the next week at All In or All Out. See how now I got it confused. And then from there, if he is to win, there's definitely an easy case now for Swerve or Fox, considering they would have a win over Darby at this high-profile match. So I don't fully rule out the idea of Darby Allin ending up in that whole thing, because again, people are just going to be happy to see Sting regardless. So
it then makes me think, could there possibly be a triple threat match at All Out for the TNT Championship? Maybe. Speaking of All In, All Out, all confused. Here's another thing I'm confused with. We're all confused about is the fact that we are very close to both events. All In being the biggest in terms of audience, All Out being arguably the biggest show of AEW's year. But we're missing one person, or it's very probable we're missing one person, and we don't understand completely why. And that person is Jade Cargill. Mex, I want you to talk to me about this one here. What is the fear or I guess the repercussions or consequences of not having a Jade Cargill at either one of these shows?
I mean, it doesn't really make sense, especially for All In being the magnitude, the big show it is. I'm sure she's one of the people that are kind of front and center on the flyer, the posters and stuff like that. They've done the whole AEW Fight Forever game, earlier this year. She's kind of front and center of all of that as well. It's just very weird. She's one of your biggest mainstream stars of your company at this point. I'm watching Collision the past 2 weeks, obviously I've seen Statlander get attacked by Diamante and Martinez, and they've gone on to have a tag team match this past week. Statlander teaming with Willow. They've gone on to lose when Martinez and Diamante win again. I'm thinking, are they going to defend this TBS title at All In? Maybe All Out, but All In obviously is what we're talking about here. And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe do a fatal 4-way, but I thought that's what they're doing for the Women's World Championship. So maybe not. But then I remember AEW doesn't really care about women's wrestling. So maybe so. So they might just do 2 fatal 4-way matches. Who knows? And I thought, okay, Jade hasn't resurfaced since the loss. Statlander says she retains in a fatal 4-way against Willow, Martinez, and Diamante. This will be a great place for maybe Jade. If no match booked, she just comes running out the crowd or whatever, hood off, gets an attack on Statlander, crowd goes crazy. And, that could be her involvement and getting her back to TV. If she wants to return to TV, that is still the conundrum, that everyone's talking about right now. We're just seeing her on Instagram parading around Italy and loving life. Now, my question here, like yours, is why is nobody talking about Jade Cargill not being at All In?
Right.
Like, have we forgotten who she is to this company and what she can offer? Like, I just don't understand why it's not even being talked about in circles that she's currently missing from this card. And there's no reported injury or anything like that. I think there's people that are probably going to miss out, but we know it's because of injury.
Right.
There's nothing. And I just feel it's, like I said, cover star, poster girl, I think is very weird. And this, depending if they do something regarding the TBS title, even though, again, like we've said in the past, the TBS title isn't where she should necessarily come back in at. Maybe she could do the exact same thing I'm saying, but with the Women's World title, if she retains, then she, comes in there. That would be good. But I guess we'll have to see. Maybe she's waiting around in Italy. It's in Europe. It's around the corner from England. Until All In. Who knows? But maybe I'm perplexed as to why no one's talking about this.
So Gerard, it gets us thinking. What is actually happening with Jade on a personal level in regards to pro wrestling. My expectation is we don't see her at all at any of these shows. But with them being the 2 biggest shows of AEW's year, again, it is, questions have to be asked. What are you thinking in terms of, where Jade is at in terms of her returning to pro wrestling in general? What does this now make you think?
Well, it's interesting. I think we all are in spaces where you want to see your hard work as a payoff. And in the wrestling business, the payoff usually means having a spot in the largest show of the year. So in the WWE, that's going to mean WrestleMania. In New Japan, it's going to mean Wrestle Kingdom. Prior to this year in AEW, it'll be All Out. But clearly, with 80,000+ people in Wembley, it's clearly All In. I think the idea that Jade Cargill is not here, which I think by all accounts is of her own volition, speaks highly to the thought process of where Jade Cargill is. I don't want to speak for anybody, but I will say it has been, by the time we get to All In, it will be 3 full months since Double or Nothing. For someone who, had been wrestling almost every week and the like, 3 months is an eternity off. You would imagine that there would be some sort of way. And I'm just thinking from a business perspective, AEW clearly knows that Jade Cargill is one of its biggest stars, without question. I don't think anybody can have that argument. So this is what makes me wonder, is Jade really saying, I don't feel like doing this right now? And not even the biggest show of the year can get me back. And if the biggest show in the history of this company, if the biggest show outside of a WWE WrestleMania is happening, and you are clearly the biggest women's star in this company who could have a shot at any title or any match you wanted, and you refuse it clearly, and we're making an assumption here by the fact that there's been absolutely no talk of her showing up. They might mention her name every now and again as the person who lost to Chris Statlander, but that's it. They're not even asking on commentary, where's Jade Cargill, right? Makes me wonder how extended this vacation from pro wrestling is. You know, for Jade, I think what people forget is she was a star before she came into pro wrestling. She had a strong following before she came into pro wrestling. What pro wrestling has done, I do feel it has elevated her star even more. Mm-hmm. Now she starts to see opportunities like movie premieres, red carpets, all of these kinds of things that capitalize on her beauty and her star power without her having to put her body on the line.
Listen, she has not been quiet about the fact that, you know, she wasn't wrestling because she needed to wrestle.
Right.
She wasn't wrestling because she needed the money.
Right.
She has her own money that she makes. Her husband is who her husband is. Mm-hmm. You know, they're doing what they're doing during this time off. I don't think I've seen so many notifications on my phone saying Jade Cargill is live.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, she's living her best life right now.
She is.
So I definitely can feel as though within herself, there is definitely no rush whatsoever for her to return. And even with these two shows being the biggest shows in the different ways that they are, I wouldn't be surprised if it's not enough. Because unless we're talking about someone like maybe a Sky Blue or even a Willow who have kind of come through the ranks in wrestling and done the hard fight, and they're completely in it. And it's not to say that Jade's passion for wrestling isn't there, but at the same time, her thought process in terms of what wrestling is to her and to her life is not the same. Right. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see her. And I will say this as well. I wouldn't see even as a bad thing for her not to be there. And when I say that, I mean for her on a personal level. I don't think it will diminish her shine, even if she does return at some point. I don't think it will make much difference. So she can afford, literally as well, to not be there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the question is then, do you think it makes a difference to AEW for her not to be there? Does it really make much difference? Because my thing is this, and we've said this here before as well, that she was never meant to be the star. So is there some kind of thing in the boardroom, in the backstage and all the rest of it, where they're maybe not that fussed about Jade Cargill coming back?
I would say, yeah. The only situation I can see that being a thing, but I think it's still stupid, is if they think maybe her development isn't coming along maybe as quickly as they would have hoped. And that's not for me to say here or there. That could be their opinion, is what I'm saying. And then they might think, okay, well, if she wants to step away, when we save, a check, whatever we're paying her, then cool, whatever. But for me, this is wrestling. Like with Jade Cargill, her stature, what she's providing outside of the ring, she doesn't need to be good inside the ring. And she is good inside the ring. Yeah, she may not be of a level of a Shida or someone like that. But if we're completely honest, a lot of women in that division are.
Facts.
So, we can't necessarily discount her for not coming along like the entire division as much as they're trying and, trying to work hard on certain things in ring and just get time on TV. They're all kind of developing and going to that next level. Not a lot of them have even wrestled on TV before AEW.
Right.
So, yeah, it would... If they're cutting their losses with her for something like that, I'd think that's stupid. to be honest. I just can't see why your biggest show wouldn't have one of your biggest stars. Like, coming, like, All In is what, next weekend? So really and truly, by Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I should be seeing Jade on my British TV doing all them talk shows and all of them kind of thing, telling us that this is happening at Wembley on Sunday. And right now, she's not advertised. You know, they're still making matches week on week. So, I don't expect to see her doing that, because if anything, they save her for a surprise. But if she was booked for the show in advance, she would be the kind of person doing these kind of, mainstream stuff. I don't even know what the question was. I'm just perplexed. I'm honestly like, I don't even know like why we're talking about this. Like, it should be a no-brainer that she's here. And if she's stepping away, then cool. But if she's not, like, why isn't she at work?
There's a part of me that feels like we're watching Mercedes and Trinity again. I feel like that moment in time actually empowered the Jade Cargills of the world to be able to say, pursue what you want, regardless of what the company's doing. Look out for you, pursue what you want, return if you desire. You know, one of the things that's different for longtime wrestling fans is we now have people entering the business that are not what we call lifers. They didn't watch this sport growing up. They can't tell you the history of it. You know, we're the kind of guys who you rattle off a year, we're going to tell you this happened, that happened, blah, 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 right? But that's not what they're doing, which is to also say that the goal in pro wrestling for those people is different than those who grew up fully watching the sport and that's all they wanted to be. Right. So it's like the person who all they ever wanted to do was be in the Super Bowl. So they play their whole lives, as opposed to a person that says, let me try this football thing. Oh, it's cool. Oh, we made the playoffs. That's nice. I don't have to do this anymore. I could say I did it. I think Jade becoming the TBS champion and through her own charisma, through her own star power, becoming the female face of the company, and in many spaces, the face of the company. When you get that within your first 2 years, what's left? You don't need to be the world champion because you had all the world championship perks as the TBS champion. So what is there left to do? And I don't think what we're seeing is an issue of AEW not trying to court her. I think it's an issue of her saying, I'm not interested in right now. And when I'm interested, that's when I'll call you. If I'm interested again. That's what I think we're at.
So could we be seeing, or not quite seeing, because we don't know what's going on, but in the background, almost, Jade almost holding them to ransom, saying, if you're not showing me enough
zeros.
You know what? Some might call it ransom. Others might call it pay me what you owe me.
Right.
Because her worth changed from when she got signed.
Today's price is not, yesterday's
that's
price
it.
is not today's price.
It's not today's price because when she was signed, she hadn't wrestled a match. They were protecting her, et cetera, et cetera. They didn't expect her to become the face of the company. Now that I'm the face of the company, you got to, it's like what MJF went through. MJF, he signed that initial contract and then he became the top guy, not getting top money. He was like, no. So if that is indeed the case for Jade, then they've got to, and who knows what her requests might be at this point. It certainly can't be the TBS championship.
The interesting thing that kind of popped in my head as you were talking as well, when we were talking about those wrestlers that are not necessarily lifers. It's difficult for wrestling fans in general to accept those types of stars within wrestling. those that are not lifers and whatnot, those that have kind of come in from someone else's suggestion, you know, and you know, kind of taken to it, thinking, oh yeah, this is actually good. Let me see what I can do with this. Jade was very much that person. We know Bianca Belair was definitely that type of person. There are so many we can name now, and especially most of these kids now that are part of the Neil program, you know, in the Performance Center and stuff like that. But it's like, you know, as I was thinking, I was just thinking how, you know, fans would react and all the rest of it, and they'll be disgruntled by it and all that kind of stuff, and saying, you know, so what is she doing here and blah blah blah. But yet, these same people are going to their 9-to-5s that they don't even like.
That part.
And making their money. So you can't then, you know, be disgruntled about someone else who is doing a very similar thing. Yeah. In a different space to you, but at the same time, this is the way the world is, or well, at least within pro wrestling right now, this is the way things are. Yeah. So in no way am I disgruntled by Jade, you know, being where she's at or thinking the way that we assume she's thinking right now, and not being in a rush to come back to pro wrestling. It's very interesting, you know, just to imagine, you know, the types of maybe the conversations, her thought process right now, and all the rest of it, for her to miss the two biggest shows of AEW's year, and there've been no sign of her at all. No one's talking about it. Not even the dirt sheets are you know, contemplating what's going on and all that kind of stuff. It's very interesting. And then you've got this whole thing of, you know, the issues with the women's division in general in AEW. There are so many things to, you know, that go through your mind. It's a little crazy, but at the same time, yeah, to think that she's not going to be there. And again, I will say it again, I really don't expect to see her there. I just don't see it happening. The only way is by surprise, as Mex said. And I think that would be the only way to make it work in my eyes as well. I don't think us knowing a week or 2 weeks before, even 2 days before, that she might be there works either. I think they need to kind of carry it on. And if it is a surprise, that it has to be a surprise. Moving our attention just a little bit, we go over to the WWE. And the New Day continue to push the boat when it comes to the cultural references. It was very interesting. We saw Riddle and Drew McIntyre, after winning their match backstage. They were backstage and were approached by the New Day, who, in great form, were carrying white chairs. Gerard, I'm gonna give you this one. Just tell us exactly why these white chairs mean so much, and also what was said during this little backstage promo with Xavier Woods and Cole.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, the New Day historically have been phenomenal when it comes to being connected to all things Black culture. You know, from the times that they literally would take a knee and, you know, put a fist up in protest, to, you know, the things that they would wear on their trunks or random things they would say in a promo. So they decided to make an ode to the Alabama Brawl, which strangely enough, Wade Barrett made a reference to it last week, and I lost my lunch. It was amazing. You go back and watch on Raw last week. He mentioned the Alabama Brawl, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he said that. So this was their reference to it. Obviously, the white chair representing one of the guys at the Brawl who had a chair and used the white chair to hit his opponent, we will say. And so so they had that reference in there, but while doing that, they started talking about the tag team division. And in talking about the tag team division, they said that, you know, it's gone awry and amok since they left. You know, now all of a sudden you got, in their words, the Street Profits trying to be a wannabe Cedric and Shelton, which I'm just like, whoa. So it was the first reference that anybody in WWE made to what the Street Profits could be doing with Bobby Lashley, but also the first reference we get on WWE TV that made comparisons to the Hurt Business. All of which I think is extremely interesting. And you've got to wonder how in the world will the Street Profits respond? They've had a long-standing history with the New Day. They both have traded tag titles before and had great matches. What's going to happen with this? Very interesting stuff from the New Day.
Mix, you can try and answer that question.
What's going to happen with the New Day? I don't know. See the New Day. I don't know where. I think Triple H as well is trying to shuffle things along with the kind of new, I guess, regime. I just don't know where the New Day stand. I think it was somewhat disappointing. Obviously, Kofi laid off for a bit. Big E, he's still, with his injury. Nothing happened with Xavier Woods.
Right.
Nothing at all. Wasn't even on TV. So
right.
Where are they even really seen in this current landscape? Yeah, they probably still sell merch and great for the kids and all that kind of stuff. Do WWE care about tag team wrestling? That's another question, really. But you might see them break the walls of the brand split, as everyone is doing recently, and go over to SmackDown and have a bit of a program with the Street Profits, and maybe the Street Profits, they could be the Street Profits first victim sort of thing. Probably wouldn't mind at all putting these guys over and what they're trying to do. So yeah, that's where we can see it. But I just feel like, I don't know, my energy for the New Day is a bit low these days, just because I don't know if the act still has life in it, or how the Office perceive the act at this point.
I think I'm exactly in the same place as you, to be honest. It's a question of them being away for so long, or not being the New Day of old for so long, them being in programs with the Viking Raiders that didn't necessarily go anywhere for anyone either. And again, the injuries and stuff like that that's been happening. And then you've got, as you said, this whole new regime and whatnot. We've got new tag teams that are, the Alpha Academy, who are, getting all the shine right now. The Viking Raiders are still just about every single week. I'm still wondering why, but still, they gave us great matches with Alpha Academy. You've got, you've got Imperium doing their thing. And all these other tag teams, and even the tag team champions, were putting Riddle and Drew McIntyre together. Glasgow? What? and then of course, we're getting the new stuff with the Street Profits. You still got the Brawling Brutes and the OC and blah blah blah. Where do the New Day fit? And I'm just kind of questioning, do they even fit anywhere? And if they do, WWE are going to have to put in so much work, or give them so much time in order to get them anywhere close to where they used to be. Or I think even in terms of any kind of relevance, they'll always be, they'll always have a place in our hearts and all that kind of stuff and whatnot. But I feel as though, feeling as though they are real tag team contenders again, is a hard, is a hard thing to get with. But I just don't know. Gerard, do you think it's possible for them to reach that, or what will they need to do in order to kind of elevate themselves back to where they used to be?
It's funny. I think it's possible. I think, they may have to take a page out of the Chris Jericho playbook and evolve and reinvent themselves. I think they have taken pride in being able to say, we've been the same guys for the last 10 years, right?
Very true.
Which, hey, at one point they were tossing pancakes and they came out of cereal boxes, and they're still super fun loving. At some point, the fun loving thing has got to evolve. Chris Jericho used to, write down lists of wrestling holds, and then, he evolved into the Millennial Man, and then his evolution has kept him relevant now for over 20 years, And so, last week we celebrated 24 years of his WWE debut, and it's crazy to think that his ability to reinvent himself has allowed him in his 50s to still be a main event player in a brand new company, So I think for the New Day to be taken as serious contenders, they have to evolve. You know, we saw the Usos evolve, right?
True.
We've seen, you know, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn evolve. You have, and considering that those level of tag team champions are wrestling different, are giving us different caliber and qualities of matches, we know that the New Day has the ability to. It's now, okay, we've seen that you can play games. That's cute. That's great. You can still do up, up, down, down on your off time. But when you get in this ring, be the New Day that kicks butt and takes names so that we can now take you seriously, because at one point that super fun stuff, it stood out in a good way. At this point, because the business has evolved, if they don't evolve with it, it will make them a nostalgia act, and we don't want to see that.
And we're seeing a very similar thing, of course, with the Street Profits as well.
Yes.
They're changing the way. They were very much fun loving, not as eccentric as the New Day, I guess, but at the same time they came out, you know, jumped in the crowd and in their entrance and partied with them in their celebrations and have the red cups and blah blah. We ain't seen no red cups falling from the sky from now on. I'm telling you that for nothing. Bobby won't have any of it.
You know, it's serious when there are no red cups and Angelo Dawkins has an edge up. That's how you know it's serious.
Something's different.
I think they just need to remember who their boss is right now. Who's writing the show, who's the head of creative.
For sure.
Obviously, once upon a time there was that guy in charge, and he likes silly-ish stuff, and it worked. Like it absolutely worked, and New Day became, you know, one of the biggest acts in the company, the biggest tag team. They had all the records and all that kind of thing. Their manager, their boss, their head of creative has changed. And he likes more things with a bit of an edge, or you know, more realism within wrestling. So I just think they need to, like you're saying, just pivot to something that develops them and brings them into 2023 more than anything with their current act.
I think it is definitely a case of, you know, one, their experience, or, you know, how long they've been there, how long we've seen a very similar, you know, the same thing, I guess. And that has kind of, you know, it's kind of withered down a little bit as well, because they can't be as eccentric. It just doesn't work for this regime of WWE now. It definitely needs to happen. I don't think it needs to be, you know, them becoming all serious and them putting on suits and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be that far. It doesn't have to be an extreme development, but something has to change. I think they need to step back a little. And the worrying thing is, we know that Xavier Woods himself is very good at this, kind of stepping back, reading the room, and then saying, this is what we're going to do. Because that's kind of how, you know, that's literally how the New Day kind of came about in the first place. So I think that definitely needs to happen again. They need to step back a little, read the room, and say, all right, we're going to do it this way. Otherwise, they're just going to, you know, disappear into the shadows. And we talk about, you know, their old boss having, you know, loving the fun and all that kind of stuff, almost to the stereotypical detriment of Black people. But at the same time, we now don't have R-Truth and the 24/7 championship. We don't see any of that, where we saw that every single week. And as entertaining as it could be, it definitely would not work in this current era of WWE. So I believe the New Day have a bit of work to do in order to stay relevant, or in order to feel relevant, whether that be with the fans or, you know, with the powers that be, so to speak. Just to touch on one last thing before we go. Today is a Tuesday, as we record right now. We know that in a few hours or so, Wesley is going to have one of the biggest matches of his career when he takes on Dijak to determine the number one contender for Carmelo Hayes' NXT Championship. Mex, how important is this for Wesley, and how did we get here for Wesley? Like, what's going on with Wesley right now? I think he's a little bit all over the place. But help me out,
Yeah, he seems a bit scattered since he lost his North American title. But he's found himself in the number one contenders match. Obviously, he's got a bit of a on-screen relationship, if you want to call it, with Carmelo Hayes. What's interesting to me is that they haven't actually used, the situation of what happened previously between these two with the North American title. They haven't leaned in on that. Maybe they're waiting until Wesley maybe becomes number one contender for sure. But yeah, he doesn't seem in the right mind frame at all. But this could again be like a pivot of character. Like he's been the fun-loving guy, so much so it led him into trouble accepting an open challenge he shouldn't have accepted and lost his title. True. So now, it might be just trying something new. Dijak, unfortunately, is just like the perennial loser in NXT. He's something akin to Lance Archer in AEW, someone I have super high hopes for every time they're on screen, and then they just don't win. And I'm just like, am I still meant to be scared of you? Like, it's unfortunate, but it'll be an interesting match. It'll be a great match, that's for sure. It's just going to be very interesting to see if the outcome is Wesley. Is he being prepped for something higher? I feel like we're almost at the edge of our seats waiting. Carmelo Hayes is out the door. So if Wesley does ascend to that position, number one contender, I will be leading the chance, thinking it's Wesley gonna win
again. So we've seen Wesley take on Dijak before as when he was the African American champion. A phenomenal match that kicked off. I can't remember what the pay-per-view was, but it was a phenomenal match. And of course, Wesley came out as the victor. It seems very likely he'll come out as the victor again in this one. But Gerard, what would happen for Carmelo Hayes if it were Dijak that won? Would it be, as Mick said, if Wesley won, it just feels more likely Wesley would then become the champion. It means Carmelo's out the door and he comes to the main roster. Do you feel as though that would be a very similar thing if it were Dijak that came out as the winner tonight?
It's interesting because I actually have Dijak pegged as the winner for tonight. And I have him pegged as the winner for tonight to continue this downward spiral for Wesley. So that I feel like the Wesley match is a bigger match that'll probably happen at the No Mercy pay-per-view at the end of September. So I think Dijak wins this and finally gets that title shot that has eluded him his entire time in NXT. I do think what this ends up doing for Carmelo Hayes is before Carmelo leaves, and it's so
Is Gerard gone?
We lost him.
I think we lost him. No! He's about to make the greatest reference as well. You know what I mean? Damn. Yeah, I think we've lost him. But until Gerard gets back, do you think you can answer that question, Mex, in terms of what happens if Dijak wins, what it means for Carmelo Hayes?
I mean, if Dijak wins, I'm all for a surprise. Like I said, when Dom beat Wesley, like I'm so here for the out of nowhere win, which a lot of people wouldn't see coming. But yeah, if Dijak could, get that win, ascend to that position of number one contender, and then you got him versus Carmelo Hayes, it's a different kind of obstacle. I guess the biggest person Carmelo Hayes has slayed right now is Bron Breakker. The most violent person he slayed is Dragunov. So it's just putting a different kind of person in front of him to pose some other kind of threats. But like I say, with Dijak, you just never count on him winning a big one, unfortunately.
Here's the other thing to think about as well, though, because obviously we had Carmelo Hayes defeat Dragunov. But Dragunov is still kind of, hunting Carmelo Hayes down. And we said that if Wesley wins, it feels as though more than likely Wesley would then become champion. I'm now thinking, because of this whole thing with Dragunov, that Dragunov is going to be the one to dethrone Hayes. So in between all of this, what happens? Because do we get a triple threat at some point? Do we go back to do we get Dragunov Hayes 2? You know what I mean? Like, could there be something else happening and Carmelo being in NXT for a little bit longer in order for Dragunov to then dethrone him?
Dragunov could be an option to come back round after he's beaten up Trick Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Does Dragunov need to be NXT champion? I don't know if that does anything for him. I don't know if it does anything for the brand either in terms of like star power or anything like that. I just think everyone's very familiar with Dragunov, and really and truly we should be looking to move him up to the main roster. Bron Breaker's still there as well. Like it's very weird, that main event scene. Like everyone's ready to go. Sort of thing, but no one's getting picked, which at the same time I am a fan of, because we've seen in the past people getting moved up when there's no plan for them on the main roster. So if these guys need more time before a plan becomes available, like even just now we're seeing JD McDonough really be involved in stuff on the main roster since he moved up since the draft. So yeah, it's difficult, man, but Dragunov is always a good contender. He's always a good name to throw in the hat.
And that's the thing as well. Like I was going to say, like we've got this whole thing with NXT where there are so many people who are ready, have enough caliber and all the rest of it to be NXT champion, to be in the main the main event scene. But it's just not happening. Like you've got the likes of Tyler Bate, fighting for the Heritage Cup. Yes, he's got history with it, but should he really be there? Dijak's floating around. Dragunov isn't champion yet. Bron Breakker just lost to he didn't lose, but he got smashed into a table by my guy, the big tall dude. I can't remember his name. And then you've got Dragon Lee who's about and whatnot. Like I almost feel as though it's all, I don't know if it's saturated or they just don't know what to do with these top guys. And I don't think it's, for me, I don't think it's working at the moment, because I don't feel as though there is a real threat to Carmelo Hayes apart from Dragunov. No one else seems like a threat to me. And
Dragunov and Wesley, I'll probably say.
Wesley possibly, but he has to, obviously he's going to have to put the work in tonight to kind of, not necessarily prove it, but just kind of, make sure, that he's there. For me, I believe Dragunov should be NXT champion, and I'd want him to go on a run of just violence with this NXT championship and then move to the main roster. I think that would work better for him than him just going there, because again, I don't know if there's a place for him on the main roster at the moment.
I mean, the place everyone has mentioned is that he comes out and challenges Gunther for the IC title, which is pretty much the only place, or should I say, the best place he could debut and show up.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. It's going to be very much interesting to see what happens. With all of that said, we have come to the end of our show. This has been WrstlXtra. You're watching on the WrestleManiac UK YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, where you can see us every single Tuesday. And of course, see this guy put out all his videos, reactions and stuff to WWE, AEW, and everything in between. You can also follow Mix on Instagram, on WrestleManiac.uk, and on Twitter at WrestleManiac UK. Also, you can follow Gerard Bonner, who unfortunately disappeared from us. But you can find him in so many other places. It doesn't matter that he disappeared. You can find him on all things Bonafide, his own show, The Faction Show, as well as WWT Live, the Nightmare Factory, Battle Slam, and Southern Honor Wrestling, as well as so many other places you can find that guy. You can find me. The best place to find me is on Instagram, Black Wrestling Alliance, and also on Twitter, BWA Dazzle. This has been our show. This is our time, and we are out of here.
See you later, guys.